The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter was quiet except for the low hum of the ISV Pathfinder's engines. Commander Alex Donovan stood on the bridge, watching as his ship moved slowly among the rocks. They were here to find minerals to mine, just like any other mission. Alex had done this many times before. "Commander, you should come see this," said Olivia Martinez over the radio. Olivia was the ship's language expert. She wasn't usually excited about rocks. Alex made his way to the small shuttle where Olivia and two others were working on a medium-sized asteroid. When he arrived, he saw why she had called. There, half buried in the rock, was something that didn't belong. It was a black, smooth rectangle about 10 feet tall. It didn't look natural. "What is it?" Alex asked, touching the cold surface. "We don't know yet, but look at these." Olivia pointed to small symbols carved into the side of the object. "These are not random. They're language symbols." Alex's heart beat faster. In all his years of space travel, he had never found proof of alien life. "How old do you think it is?" Ben Fuller, the team's scientist, looked up from his scanner. "First tests say it's at least 3 million years old. Maybe older." 3 million. Alex couldn't hide his shock. "That's way before humans even existed." "Yes," Ben nodded. "Whatever made this, they weren't human." Over the next 3 days, the crew carefully removed the object. They started calling it the monolith. From the asteroid, they brought it into the Pathfinder's cargo hold for better study. Olivia spent every waking hour looking at the symbols, trying to make sense of them. Her small office was covered in pictures and notes. On the 7th day, she called Alex and Ben to see her. "I think I understand some of it," she said, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "It's a warning." Alex looked at the images on her screen. A warning about what? It warned about going to a certain area of space. Olivia pointed to a star map she had drawn. "These symbols show coordinates. The message says this area must be avoided at all costs." "Does it say why?" Ben asked. Olivia shook her head. "Not clearly. But it uses symbols that suggest great danger or death. Whatever is there, the people who left this were very afraid of it." Alex thought for a moment. "We need to report this to Space Command." 2 weeks later, Admiral Samantha Reeves sat across from them in a conference room at Space Command headquarters on Earth. She didn't look impressed. "So you found an old rock with some scratches, and now you think we should avoid exploring a whole region of space." Her voice was flat. "With respect, Admiral, these aren't just scratches." Olivia pushed forward her translation notes. "This is a deliberate message left by an advanced civilization, one that existed before humans. Or it's a prank left by some early space explorers," the Admiral said. "Carbon dating says it's millions of years old," Ben said. The Admiral sighed. "Look, I appreciate your concern. I'll send the coordinates to ships in that sector with a caution notice. But we won't stop exploration based on this alone." As they left the meeting, Alex felt frustrated. "She doesn't believe us." "No," Olivia agreed, "but someone else might." 3 days later, Olivia received a message from Gregory Winters, a billionaire who had made his fortune in space technology. He had heard about their discovery through his contacts at Space Command. "He wants to meet," Olivia told Alex. "He says he believes us." Alex looked at the message. "Be careful. Not everyone who believes us will have good intentions." What they didn't know was that Gregory Winters was already planning an expedition to the forbidden coordinates. The warning that had been left to protect humanity was about to be broken, and the consequences would change the fate of the human race forever. 2 years passed since the discovery of the monolith. Humans had built new homes on planets beyond Earth. Ships traveled farther into space than ever before. Captain Diane Clark stood on the bridge of her ship, the Starlight Venture. It was a trading ship that carried goods between Earth and the new colonies. Diane was tall with short brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Captain, we're picking up a signal," said Frank Miller, who worked with the ship's communication systems. Frank was older than most of the crew, with gray in his beard. "It's not one of ours." Diane walked over to his station. "What do you mean, not one of ours?" "It's not from any human ship or colony," Frank said. His fingers moved over the controls. "The pattern is all wrong." Diane felt a chill run down her back. In 20 years of space travel, she had never heard of anyone finding signals from non-humans. "Where is it coming from?" Frank pointed to a spot on the star map. "Not far from here. Just a small change in course." Diane thought for a moment. They were carrying supplies that were needed on the Newton colony, but they weren't late yet. "Let's check it out. But we stay alert." The Starlight Venture changed direction, moving toward the strange signal. After 6 hours, they saw it, a ship unlike any they had seen before. It was smooth and curved, with no sharp edges. It glowed with a soft blue light. "They're sending a message," Frank said. I think they're trying to speak English." "Put it on the speakers," Diane ordered. A voice filled the bridge. It sounded almost human, but with a strange echo. "Greetings, human vessel. We are the Vextor. We wish to speak with you in peace." Diane took a deep breath. This was first contact with an alien species. Everything she did now would be remembered in history. "This is Captain Diane Clark of the Starlight Venture. We greet you in peace as well." The alien ship invited them to dock so they could meet face to face. After a careful check of the situation, Diane agreed. She took Frank and 2 security officers with her. The inside of the alien ship was strange. The walls seemed to glow and pulse. The air smelled like cinnamon. Then they saw the aliens. The Vextor were tall and thin. Their skin was pale blue, and they had 4 arms. Their eyes were large and dark. They wore simple white clothes. "We welcome you," said one who stepped forward. "I am Zex, speaker for the Vextor." Diane introduced herself and her crew. "We didn't know there were other intelligent beings in this part of space." "We are travelers," Zex said. "We move from place to place, learning about the universe. We have never met humans before. This is a good day." Over the next few hours, they talked. The Vextor asked many questions about Earth and human colonies. They seemed most interested in how many people lived on each planet and what weapons the ships carried. Frank leaned close to Diane. "They're asking a lot of questions, but not answering many," he whispered. Diane had noticed the same thing. When she asked about Vextor history or their home planet, Zex would smile and change the subject. Before they left, Zex gave them a small device. "This is a gift," he said. "It will make your engines work better. We would like to meet more humans. Will you tell your leaders about us?" "Of course," Diane said, taking the device. "I'm sure they will want to meet you." Back on the Starlight Venture, Frank looked worried. "I don't trust them," he said. "Something feels wrong." Diane nodded. "I feel it too. But we can't just ignore the first aliens we've ever met. We'll report this to Space Command and let them decide what to do." What Diane didn't know was that the small device Zex had given them was already sending signals back to the Vextor ship. Signals that contained everything in the Starlight Venture's computer, including maps to all human colonies and Earth itself. 6 months after humans met the Vextor, strange things began to happen. On the colony of New Earth, all the power went out for 3 hours. No one could explain why. On Mars base, important military files disappeared from computers. On 3 different ships, the captains reported feeling dizzy and then not remembering what happened for several hours. Lieutenant Heather Powell worked for Colonial Intelligence, the group that kept human colonies safe. She had short red hair and a mind that saw patterns others missed. For weeks, she had been collecting reports of these strange events. "There's something wrong," she told her boss, Colonel Kyle Bennett, in his office on Earth. "These aren't random problems. Someone is testing our systems, looking for weak spots." Colonel Bennett leaned back in his chair. He was usually sharp and focused, but today his eyes seemed foggy. You're making a big deal out of nothing, Lieutenant. Systems fail. People get sick. It happens. Heather frowned. This wasn't like the colonel she knew. Sir, in the last month, 12 high-ranking military officers have reported memory loss. That's not normal. Are you questioning my judgment, Lieutenant? The colonel's voice was suddenly cold. No, sir, Heather said quickly. I'm just concerned. Don't be. Everything is fine. The Vextor have been nothing but helpful. Their technology has improved our ships and communications. He stood up. That will be all. As Heather left the office, she felt uneasy. The colonel had mentioned the Vextor, but she hadn't brought them up. Why was he so quick to defend them? That night, Heather contacted two people she trusted completely. Ryan Morrison, a computer expert who worked in security, and Sofia Garcia, a doctor who had treated several of the officers with memory loss. They met in Heather's small apartment. I think something big is happening, Heather said. And I think it has to do with the Vextor. Ryan nodded. I've been tracking unusual data transfers. Huge amounts of information are being sent to locations I can't trace. Military plans, colony defenses, Earth's power grid details. It's all being copied. And the memory loss cases are strange. Sofia added. I found tiny marks on the necks of the patients, like something was inserted under their skin. But medical scans show nothing. Heather felt cold fear in her stomach. We need proof before we take this higher up. Colonel Bennett didn't believe me, and I'm worried he might be compromised. Compromised how? Ryan asked. I don't know, Heather admitted. But he's not acting like himself. And he's not the only one. People in important positions are making decisions that don't make sense, unless they want to weaken our defenses. They made a plan. Ryan would track the data transfers and try to find where they were going. Sofia would secretly scan more patients and gather medical evidence. Heather would look for patterns in security breaches. Be careful who you talk to, Heather warned. We don't know who we can trust. 3 days later, Ryan called Heather in the middle of the night. His voice was a whisper. I found something. The data is being sent to devices hidden on each colony and major ship. The devices are tiny but powerful, and they match the technology the Vextor gave us. So the Vextor are spying on us, Heather said. It's worse, Ryan said. I think they're preparing for something big. One of the files they copied was about Earth's missile defense system. Why would peaceful travelers need that? The next day, Heather was checking security footage from Mars base when an alert flashed on her screen. Someone was accessing old files about a discovery made 2 years ago. Files about a monolith found in the asteroid belt with a warning message. Heather's heart raced. She remembered hearing about the monolith when she was still in training. A warning from the past about a danger in space. What if, she thought, the warning was about the Vextor? Heather Powell couldn't sleep. The connection between the monolith's warning and the Vextor bothered her all night. The next morning, she took a shuttle to Mars. Someone was looking at those old files for a reason, and she needed to find out why. The Mars Archive was a large building that held copies of important human records. Heather showed her Colonial Intelligence badge to the guard and went inside. She followed the record of who had accessed the monolith files. The trail led to a small research room at the back of the building. Heather opened the door slowly, her hand near her weapon. Inside, an older man with wild gray hair sat surrounded by papers and screens. He looked up, startled. Who are you? They both asked at the same time. The man stood up. Nobody. I'm nobody. Just a researcher. His eyes darted to the door behind her. You're looking at classified files about the monolith discovery, Heather said. That's not something a nobody would have access to. The man sighed and sat back down. Closed the door. You never know who might be listening. Heather did, but stayed alert. The man looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. My name is Gregory Winters, he said. Heather recognized the name. The billionaire. You disappeared a year ago. People thought you were dead. That was the plan. Gregory said, I needed to disappear so I could work in secret. He pointed to the screens around him. Do you know about the monolith? Only the basic story, Heather said. It was found in the asteroid belt. It had some kind of warning about a region of space. Yes, but that's not the full story. Gregory's voice was intense. After it was found, I funded an expedition to those coordinates. I was curious. I thought maybe there were resources there, or ancient technology. What did you find? Heather asked. Nothing at first, just empty space. Gregory's hands shook slightly. But then we detected signals. Very old signals, from dozens of dead civilizations, and recordings, terrible recordings of what happened to them. Which was what? Extinction. Complete extinction. Gregory looked her in the eyes. The Vex tour happened to them. Heather felt cold. Tell me everything. Gregory explained that the Vex tour weren't simply travelers. They were hunters. For thousands of years, they have followed the same pattern. They would find a developing civilization, pretend to be friendly, give them technology that secretly allowed the Vex tour to spy on them. And then, when they knew all the civilization's weaknesses, they would attack. They don't just conquer, Gregory said. They consume. They take all resources, all knowledge, and then move on. They leave nothing behind. That's why the monolith was a warning, to stay away from their hunting grounds. But you went there, Heather said. Yes. Gregory looked down. And they detected our ship. We escaped. But they followed the trail back. They'd been looking for Earth ever since. And now they found us. Heather thought about all the strange events, the memory losses, the data transfers. They're already here. They've been infiltrating us for months. Yes. Gregory stood up and gathered his papers. That's why I've been hiding. I've been trying to find a way to stop them. I think I've discovered how they control people, some kind of neural parasite. But I need help. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the building. Red lights flashed. We need to go, Heather said, drawing her weapon. Now. As they ran from the room, Heather saw guards coming toward them. But these guards moved strangely, almost like puppets. Their eyes were empty. They're compromised, Gregory whispered. The Vex tour are controlling them. Heather pulled Gregory down a side hallway. She knew they had to escape. They had to warn others about what was really happening. The ancient warning had been broken, and now humanity was in grave danger. But first, they had to survive. Heather and Gregory ran through the back halls of the Mars archive. Behind them, they could hear the heavy footsteps of the guards. They found a small maintenance room and hid inside. We need to contact someone who hasn't been compromised, Heather whispered. But how do we know who to trust? Gregory thought for a moment. What about ships that have been away on long missions? The Vex tour have only been here for 6 months. Anyone who left before that might be safe. Heather nodded. The Defiance. It's been on a 5-year exploration mission. They're just returning now to the edge of our space. The captain is Eleanor Wright. I know her. She's tough and smart. Using her secure communication device, Heather sent an encoded message to the Defiance. She explained as much as she could about the Vex tour threat. Then she and Gregory slipped out of the building and made their way to a small spaceport. They needed to get off Mars before the Vex tour found them. Meanwhile, back on Earth, things were getting worse. The Vex tour had revealed themselves to Earth's leaders. But it wasn't a friendly meeting. In the main United Earth Government Hall, Zex stood before the most powerful humans. Many of them already had neural parasites controlling them. Your resistance is pointless, Zex said. His voice was no longer friendly. It was cold and sharp. Half of your leaders are already under our control. Your military bases are compromised. Your ships will soon be ours. President Alan Russell, who had not yet been compromised, stood up. Why are you doing this? We offered friendship. Zex made a sound that might have been a laugh. Your friendship means nothing. Your resources, your planet, Your knowledge. Those are valuable. Your species is just another meal for us. We have consumed hundreds of civilizations before you. We will fight back, President Russell said firmly. Others have tried. All have failed. Zex moved closer to the president. Your species will be gone in 1 month. Those we don't kill, we will use as slaves. That is your future. As Zex spoke, Vextor ships appeared in the skies above every major city on Earth. They were large and threatening, hovering like predators about to strike. On the Defiance, Admiral Eleanor Wright received Heather's message. Eleanor was in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen much of space. She gathered her officers. This is not a drill, she told them. Earth is under attack by an alien species that has already infiltrated our government and military. We may be the only large ship that hasn't been compromised. Her second-in-command, Jack Reese, looked worried. What can one ship do against an entire alien fleet? We can be smart, Eleanor said. And we can be something they don't expect. Unpredictable. She turned to her communications officer. Send messages to all human colonies and ships. Tell them to look for signs of neural parasites controlling their leaders. Then set course for Mars. We need to pick up Lieutenant Powell and this man Winters. Back on Mars, Heather and Gregory had stolen a small ship. As they prepared to launch, they saw 5 people approaching. Heather raised her weapon, but Gregory stopped her. Wait, he said. Look at their eyes. The people walking toward them moved normally. Their eyes were clear and alert, not empty like the controlled guards. We got your message, said a woman at the front of the group. She was Dr. Betty Chen, the leading scientist on Mars. We've been watching the strange behavior too. We want to help. Heather lowered her weapon. We're meeting the Defiance. Do you know others who aren't compromised? Dr. Chen nodded. A few. Scientists, mostly. We've been working on something that might help. A way to detect the neural parasites with a scanner. For the first time in days, Heather felt a small spark of hope. If they could identify who was controlled and who wasn't, they might have a chance to fight back. As their ship lifted off from Mars, a message came through from Earth. The Vextor had dropped all pretense of friendship. The invasion had officially begun. The Defiance was the largest exploration ship in the human fleet. Admiral Eleanor Wright stood on the bridge as they approached Mars. On the main screen, she could see the small ship carrying Heather Powell and the others leaving the Red Planet. Bring them in, she ordered, and then set course for the Jupiter Defense Station. We need more ships. Within an hour, Heather's group was aboard the Defiance. They gathered in the main meeting room with Admiral Wright and her officers. The Vextor have started their invasion, Eleanor said. They have ships over all major cities on Earth. Our military is confused. Many leaders are giving contradicting orders. Because they're being controlled, Gregory explained. He looked tired but determined. The neural parasites let the Vextor take over a person completely. They see everything that person sees, know everything they know. Dr. Betty Chen stepped forward. She was small but spoke with confidence. My team has been studying strange behavior patterns for weeks. We developed this. She placed a small device on the table. It can detect the unique energy signature of the neural parasites. And once we find them, Jack Reese asked, we think they can be neutralized with a specific electromagnetic frequency, Betty said. But we need to test it. Eleanor looked at the device. Test it on this ship first. Make sure everyone here is clean. Then we contact all ships and colonies we can trust. As the tests began, scientists Peter Blackwood and Natalie Jenkins worked with Dr. Chen to develop a larger version of the device. If they could create one powerful enough, they might be able to free many people at once. Meanwhile, the Vextor continued their attack. On Earth, they disabled power grids and communication networks. Their ships landed in key locations, and strange Vextor soldiers emerged. They were tall and moved with frightening speed. Their weapons fired blue energy that could cut through almost anything. In space, Vextor warships attacked human colonies and outposts. Many fell quickly, unprepared for the sudden violence from what they thought were allies. Back on the Defiance, Peter finally had a breakthrough. "We've modified the electromagnetic pulse," he told Admiral Wright. "It should neutralize the parasites without harming the human hosts." "Test it," Eleanor ordered. They had captured a compromised security officer who had tried to sabotage the engine room. They strapped him to a chair and activated the device. The man screamed and thrashed. Then something small and dark emerged from the back of his neck. It was about the size of a coin, with tiny legs. It fell to the floor dead. The man blinked and looked around in confusion. "What happened? Where am I?" "It works," Natalie said, her voice filled with relief. Eleanor didn't waste time. "Prepare a fleet-wide broadcast. Send the specifications for this device to every ship and colony that isn't yet under Vextor control. And set course for Earth." "Earth?" Jack looked surprised. "That's where the Vextor fleet is strongest." "Exactly," Eleanor said. "They'll expect us to hide, to run. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to hit them where they think they're most secure." As the Defiance headed toward Earth, other ships joined them. Captains who had received the cure for the neural parasites freed their crews and turned against the Vextor. It was still a small force compared to the enemy, but it was growing. In her quarters, Eleanor studied everything they knew about the Vextor. "They've been doing this for thousands of years," she thought. "They're confident. They think they know exactly how this will end. That would be their weakness. The Vextor expected fear, surrender, and chaos. They didn't understand humans. They didn't realize that humans fought hardest when the situation seemed most hopeless." Eleanor smiled grimly. "You broke our warnings, invaded our home, and thought we would be easy prey," she said to the image of a Vextor ship on her screen. "That was your mistake, and it will be your last." The Vextor fleet surrounded Earth like a swarm of giant metal insects. Their ships were dark and sleek, moving with unnatural precision. From his command ship, Zex watched with satisfaction. The pattern was playing out just as it had hundreds of times before with other species. Soon, Earth would be theirs. A lieutenant approached him. "Supreme Commander, we detect a small group of human ships approaching from the direction of Mars." Zex made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 arms. "Let them come. They are too few to matter." At the edge of the solar system, Admiral Eleanor Wright's fleet gathered. It had grown to 27 ships of various sizes. The Admiral stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking at the tactical display. The Vextor had over 100 ships. "We're outnumbered," Jack Reese said quietly. "But not outsmarted," Eleanor replied. "Is everyone clear on the plan?" Jack nodded. "All ships are ready." Eleanor took a deep breath. "Begin Operation Thunderbolt." The human fleet split into 3 groups. The smallest group, led by the Defiance, headed straight toward Earth. They moved slowly, making no attempt to hide. On his command ship, Zex watched the approaching humans with amusement. Such a small force. They must be desperate. "Should we intercept them?" his lieutenant asked. "No, let them come closer. We will destroy them all at once and break the human spirit." What Zex didn't know was that the human ships were broadcasting a signal carrying the electromagnetic frequency that could disable the neural parasites. As they moved toward Earth, more and more compromised humans were being freed. Meanwhile, the second group of human ships circled wide around the solar system. They carried special equipment developed by Peter and Natalie. When they reached position, they activated it. Suddenly, alarms blared on the Vextor ships. "Supreme Commander," the lieutenant called out, "our communication network is being disrupted." Zex moved quickly to a control panel. The Vextor relied on a linked neural network to coordinate their ships. Now it was filled with static. For the first time, Zex felt something like fear. That was when the third group of human ships attacked from behind. They had been hiding in the shadow of Jupiter, using the gas giant to mask their approach. They fired directly at the engines of the outer Vex-Tor ships. On the bridge of a small, fast attack ship called the Falcon, Officer Jason Carter implemented his part of the plan. Jason was young with quick hands and a quicker mind. He had discovered that the Vex-Tor communication signals could be turned against them. "Activating the virus now," he said to his captain. Jason had created a computer virus that could enter the Vex-Tor network through their own communication signals. It spread rapidly from ship to ship, shutting down weapon systems and life support. Zex watched in horror as his fleet began to fall into chaos. Ships lost power, drifted out of formation, or fired at the wrong targets. This had never happened before. In all their conquests, no species had ever turned the Vex-Tor's technology against them. "Find the source of this disruption," he ordered. "Destroy those human ships." But it was too late. The Defiance had reached Earth orbit. Admiral Wright activated the main electromagnetic pulse device. It sent a powerful wave across the entire planet. All over Earth, neural parasites died. Controlled humans were freed. The battle in space raged for hours. Human ships were smaller and less advanced, but they fought with desperate courage. They used their knowledge of the solar system, hiding behind moons, and using the sun's radiation to mask their movements. Slowly, the tide began to turn. With their neural network disabled and their controlled humans freed, the Vex-Tor lost their advantage. Their perfect coordination was gone. On the Defiance, Admiral Wright watched as another Vex-Tor ship exploded. "Push forward," she ordered. "Don't give them time to recover." By the end of the day, half the Vex-Tor fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The rest began to retreat toward the edge of the solar system. But the humans weren't finished with them yet. 3 weeks after the Battle of Sol, Earth was recovering. Buildings were being fixed, and systems were coming back online. But the leaders of Earth knew the war wasn't over. The Vex-Tor had retreated, but they hadn't been defeated completely. In the main meeting room of what remained of the United Earth Government building, Admiral Eleanor Wright stood before the world's leaders. President Alan Russell, now free of the neural parasite that had controlled him, listened carefully. "We've questioned the Vex-Tor prisoners we captured," Eleanor said. "What we've learned is important. The Vex-Tor have existed for thousands of years as space predators. They find civilizations, infiltrate them, and then consume them." "But why?" asked one of the leaders. "Resources," Eleanor explained, "and a belief that they are superior to all other species. They see others as food, nothing more." Gregory Winters stepped forward. He looked healthier now, less haunted. "There's something else important we learned. The Vex-Tor homeworld has almost no defenses. They've never needed them because no species has ever fought back successfully." President Russell leaned forward. "Are you suggesting what I think you are?" "Yes," Eleanor said firmly. "We should take the fight to them, end this threat forever." The room erupted in debate. Some leaders argued that humanity should focus on rebuilding, on protecting Earth. Others agreed with Eleanor. The Vex-Tor would return, they said. They always did. After hours of discussion, President Russell made his decision. "Admiral Wright, you will lead our fleet to the Vex-Tor homeworld. Your mission is to ensure they can never threaten Earth or any other species again." 2 months later, the largest fleet humans had ever assembled approached the coordinates that had once been forbidden. The coordinates from the ancient warning. Now they understood why that warning had been left. It wasn't just to avoid the Vex-Tor hunting grounds. It was to hide from these predators altogether. "We're entering their home system," Jack Reese reported on the bridge of the Defiance. Eleanor nodded. "All ships, battle formation." They expected heavy resistance, but what they found surprised them. The Vex-Tor homeworld was beautiful, with blue oceans and white clouds, but its space had few defenses. Just as Gregory had said, they had never needed them before. The few ships that rose to meet the human fleet were quickly disabled. Using what they had learned from the captured Vex-Tor technology, Humans were now able to jam their neural networks completely. From the Defiance, Eleanor sent a message to the Vextor leaders on the planet below. I am Admiral Eleanor Wright of Earth. Your forces attacked our world. Your species has consumed countless civilizations. This ends today. The response came from Zex himself, who had escaped back to his homeworld. You cannot defeat us. We have existed for thousands of years. We will rebuild and return. It is the way of things. Not anymore, Eleanor replied. We offer you two choices. Surrender and give up your ability to travel in space. We will leave monitors in your system to ensure you never threaten another species again. Or we will do to you what you have done to so many others. Zex's laugh came through the communication system. We will never surrender. And you humans don't have the will to destroy an entire species. You are weak. Eleanor looked at her officers. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this. They've made their choice, she said quietly. Over the next week, the human fleet systematically destroyed every Vextor ship, space station, and weapons platform. They didn't attack civilian areas, but they made sure the Vextor could never leave their planet again. With their technology in ruins and their neural network destroyed, the Vextor were no longer a threat to the galaxy. The hunters had become the hunted. The predators were now contained. As the human fleet prepared to return home, Eleanor visited the small science ship where the original monolith was being studied. Olivia Martinez had joined their mission to continue her work on the ancient language. We've translated more of it, Olivia told her. It wasn't just a warning. It was a plea for help. The civilization that left it knew what the Vextor were doing, but they couldn't stop them. But we did, Eleanor said. Olivia nodded and showed her the new message they had carefully added to the monolith. They broke the ancient warning, and humanity erased them. We now stand guard.